Okay, so let's start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. This week we are in Parsha Mishpatim, coming off of the high of standing at Mount Sinai last week, Parshas Yitro, getting the Ten Commandments, hearing God, really having the experience of encountering the divine, an experience that no other religion has claimed except for the Jewish people. What other religions claim is that they had a prophet who had some sort of vision or some sort of communication that then they convinced other people that they had had that experience. But nobody has ever said that there was a national revelation of God's presence to them. And that's why the other religions all piggyback on Judaism, because it has to be first based on the revelation to the Jewish people, and then somehow there was some change that shifted it to them. But it all has to be based on something that actually happened, because you cannot claim a national revelation to 3 million people if it didn't happen. Because let me just tell you, people say, no, it didn't. So when you have that many people, you have that many eyewitnesses and people who experience something, they see it, they hear it, and they all have the exact same story. That's the most ironclad witnessing that you could have, which is what it's really called standing at Sinai, is that we witnessed and we experienced that. More so than the Exodus from Egypt was the standing at Mount Sinai. So such an incredible high. So we have that, and then we go right into Parshas Mishpatim, which are 63 mitzvot about how we are supposed to treat one another. And it seems like here we're on this spiritual high, and you feel we've got our crowns for saying Na'aseh v'nishma, which actually we don't say until this week's Parsha. It's actually in Parsha Mishpatim, where we say Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it, and we will listen, and we will pay attention and obey. And when we do that, it says this is such a high point. And then right after that, and remember, we talked about before that the Parshas, that just because we heard the Torah reading last week, it feels like it's been a week since the revelation at Sinai, and now it's a week later and we're having Mishpatim. But the truth is it was one after the next, and it was right away. So this experience is something that was going from this tremendous high. We said, that they could hear the sights and see the sounds and God's voice. And the next thing you know, it's telling us how to live our lives, our ordinary lives. And the ordinary lives for this people that has been chosen to be so holy, if we look through at the laws that we are being given, if you were a parent and you had to tell your children these things, you would not necessarily think that you had children who were on the highest level. If you have to say, and if you beat your friend, I'm going to do this, it's like, who said I was going to do that? I'm like, I'm a very lofty person. It's like, don't be so sure. It says the loftiness that we have is our aspiration. The way we get to it are through these individual steps of how we treat people. So we are going to talk about not the ritual aspects, but more of the interpersonal aspects of Torah. However, as ordinary and mundane as the laws seem to be, there is actually a very deep spiritual, mystical meaning behind them. And so we're going to explore some of those as well, because they don't appear on the surface. So let's take a look at the first thing we're going to talk about. It's on page 417 in the Stone Chumash, or chapter 21, verse 1. Verse 1, and these are the ordinances, Ve'ela HaMishpatim, and the fact that it starts off with Ve'ela, and these are, that Vav means that it's connected to the end of the last Parsha. That we're talking about that these things happen one after the next, just like you're not supposed to start a sentence with and, except sometimes when you mean and. And these are the ordinances. The first thing that's talked about is called, if you buy a Jewish bondsman. Now, we have to talk about why somebody would be buying a Jewish bondsman. And I want you to kind of set aside your definitions of how you think about slavery, which is not how Judaism or Torah identifies the concept. We're talking about a Jewish bondsman, and the circumstances for that primarily were if somebody stole money or stole something, and either they couldn't pay it back, they got rid of it, it broke, whatever, they don't have the money, they gambled it all away, they don't have the money to pay back the person they stole the money from. The court will then sell the person into indentured servitude to pay off, for restitution, to pay back the money. So, and the person, somebody would buy their servitude. And interestingly, the person would only serve for 6 years, and then the 7th year, they would go free. Okay, so it was 6-year indentured servitude, and the 7th year they would go free. Okay, so now we have this holy people, and the first law we're talking about is when you steal money. So everyone gets focused on the indentured servitude, but let's talk about what happened and what went wrong that gets people to the point where they were stealing. They could say maybe they were very poor and they were shoplifting. We're not really talking like Les Miserables, like where you have debts and you steal a loaf of bread and then you end up, in court. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who is stealing and they're convicted of this and they need to pay back the money. So we're already talking about someone who you could say is a lowlife. And this is the Jewish people. Okay, so then it goes on. We're going to come back to this, but if we take a look at some of the other mitzvot, you can see just the categories that are in here. So on page, I'm just going to read them. You can flip through if you want. You can just listen. On page 421, what is the consequence for murder, manslaughter, killing a slave, penalty for bodily injury, death caused by your animals, an animal damaging property, one who steals livestock, payment for theft, what happens if you borrow something and it gets wrecked, stolen, or you ruin it, seducing someone, how to be in people who are being insensitive to the helpless people, about loans, the judicial process, not accepting bribes, etc., etc. Those are the laws. It's like, that sounds really kind of sad, that these are the laws that we are focusing on of what not to do wrong in your society. And it says, but the truth is that this is the measure of a true good society, is a society that has laws, because if we look at them, what the laws are all designed to do is to address human imperfection. And the interesting and beautiful part is that human imperfection is not a problem. It is a reality of being a human being. It's almost as if God is saying, like, don't get yourself into this place where you think that just because you have been chosen to be a holy nation, that you are exempt from being a human being who has flaws, who has faults, who makes mistakes, who does things wrong. Because somebody who thinks that they are no longer in that category is the person who's going to make the most mistakes and do the most things wrong, because they'll be in denial that that could possibly be them, because I'm a holy person. So the person who aspires to holiness realizes that the path to holiness is through watching themselves and guarding themselves in all of these different arenas in which we find ourselves. Our relationships with our property, with other people's property, with our possessions, how we interact in the marketplace, how we interact in all sorts of different scenarios. That's going to be the way we get to a place of being a holy people. When we think about that, it seems like that seems so mundane. That seems so like, oh, I thought I could, go to a top of a mountain and sit there and commune with the divine, and then I would just be holy. And what God is trying to tell us is your path to holiness is going to be through your everyday, ordinary relationships, and that you're going to be in a constant state of fixing things, saying you're sorry, repairing, giving back, taking care of mistakes that you've made. And the opposite of love story, where it says love means never having to say you're sorry. Loving other people and loving God means constantly needing to say we're sorry. Now, I'm not talking about this in a self-flagellation kind of way, but we're constantly doing things that impose on other people, or are things imposed on other people. Your dog eats your neighbor's tulips. Is that a spiritual issue? It's like, that's a spiritual issue. It's like, how are you handling your neighbor's property? And what if you get really mad at them and you kind of send your dog out there to, like, go do what you ever want to do? They, use your neighbor's yard as a toilet. That's also a problem. Okay, you can't do those things. So you want to be holy, it's going to be through respecting other people. The other underlying beauty of Mishpatim is that it rests on what people's obligations and responsibilities are to other people and not what our rights are. It doesn't talk about I'm entitled to and I have a right to. It has a focus of I am responsible for and I am obligated to. And that orientation in all of our relationships changes it from somebody, just a framework that focuses on me as a giver and a responsible person, as opposed to me as a taker looking to see and always be thinking about what other people owe me. So you change yourself from being a giver, from being a taker to being a giver. What do I owe someone else? And in a number of the things we're going to look at, we'll see that what I actually owe someone else is above and beyond what any other legal system would have you do. What anybody would have you do. It seems like you've got to be kidding. That's really above and beyond. And the question is why? Why is there a focus on doing things above and beyond? So what are we going to look at is really a beautiful example, is one of the examples, and we're going to come back to our indentured servant in a moment, but let's go to page 431. Page 431 talks about when, hold on one second, page 431.
What verse?
Yes, I'll tell you just one moment. Chapter 22, verse 24. So it's the bottom of the text there, page 431, chapter 22, verse 24. And it says, when you lend money to my people, to the poor person who is with you, do not act toward him as a creditor. Do not lay interest upon him. If you take your fellow's garment as security, until sunset shall you return it to him. For it alone is his clothing. It is his garment for his skin. In what should he lie down? So it will be that if he cries out to me, I shall listen, for I am compassionate. What's happening here? So the first thing it says is that you are loaning, which is great to lend money to somebody. And the question is, how do you act when you lend money to somebody? It says, when you lend money to somebody, it says, don't act toward them as a creditor. So we're familiar with, for sure, you can't charge them interest. Now, there are other business arrangements for which there is interest, but that is something that is way above my knowledge. I don't really know enough about it. I haven't had to know anything about it. But it says, do not lay interest upon him. But what are some of the forms of to not act as a creditor? It says, if you loan money to somebody and you want them to pay it back, or you're making sure that they know they still owe it to you, it says, you can't walk around past their house and intimidate them, even if you don't say anything. Because what is the relationship between a creditor and a lender? It says, by definition, the creditor feels diminished. If they were of equal level as you, they wouldn't have had to ask for money to borrow from you. So by definition, there's already an imbalance in the relationship. And what the Torah is telling us, what God is saying is, don't do anything that makes that any kind of like worse than it is. It's already challenging to a person, their self-respect and their self-image, that they are in need to borrow from you to begin with. And it's wonderful that you're lending, but you cannot use it in any way to oppress them. And oppressing, not just an interest, means making them feel bad. You can't make someone feel bad. Now, I don't know, have you ever been in a country that has a legal system that says you can't make your creditors feel bad? It's like, no, in fact, we have the opposite. They call them and harangue them and say, when are you paying? So you can't do that, because we are concerned about somebody's self-image, their self-respect, their self-esteem. And so we have to respect the person who is the creditor. And it goes further. says you can ask for collateral. If you're concerned that they're not going to pay back, you can ask for collateral. However, the collateral you ask for is if they give the collateral, let's say they have a car. For some reason, they have a car, they give that as collateral, but they need their car to go to work. So guess what? You have to give them their car to go to work, and then they return their car to you overnight, and then you give it back to them the next day. This is a pain in the neck. I just asked Steve before it started, it's like, do we know if it's the lender who has to do the actual returning? Like, who has to go to whom? But however you do it, this is going to be really annoying. And if the thing that they pledge as their collateral is something they need at night, like their blanket or a bed or something like that, you have to give it to them at night, and then you can take it back during the day. Because what are they supposed to do? They need to have their things. So now, again, we don't have that system anywhere. We do not have that system. And then God further enhances how important this is. And he says, so it will be that if he cries out to me, like if you oppress him and I hear about it, I shall listen, for I am compassionate. So God is saying, I have the cause of the borrower. Yes, you're doing a mitzvah by being a lender, but just because you're doing a mitzvah, it can't be at their expense. And it's very curtailed. This addresses the beautiful human nature, because what's human nature? When somebody owes us, we have a way of trying to extract something from them. There's even a question in halacha about when somebody pays the loan back, can they say thank you to the lender? Because thank you is kind of like interest, like you thanked me, like because you owe me and I did you a favor. So the person is supposed to really understand that it is a privilege to be a lender, to help somebody who is in need. So to use the opportunity as a way to put somebody down in any way, God doesn't say this about every infraction of every mitzvah. Like if I hear about it, I'm going to listen to him because this is the person on whose side I am. So this sensitivity says, you want to really be holy? Okay, so you're not going to charge interest. I'm not going to charge them a certain percentage of interest. But are you going to kind of just even nose in the air when you see them at a community event, like they owe me? We all know people who have this even about somebody owes them socially, or I got you a job, or I got you an in with this, or I picked you, whatever. There's all sorts of ways of trying to lord something over other people. Parshas Mishpatim says, be very, very careful when there is an imbalance. What's interesting is there is not the idea in Judaism of equity, that everybody has the same thing. There is not. There's always going to be people who have more and people who have less. But in order to deal with that, there's a very strong system that keeps the fabric of society intact. We would not be having this whole discussion in our Western world of oppressors and oppressed. This whole conversation is bizarre, totally bizarre. And yet there is an element that the Torah addresses, which is you do not want to be the oppressor. And needing a loan, by definition, already makes you a little bit oppressed. And so you cannot use it in any way to make it worse for the person. That incredible sensitivity says a person who is paying attention to that is a person who will become holy. That is a holy person. The next example is actually goes back up on that page 433 to chapter 22. I'm sorry, page 433. Hold on one second. That's not right. Chapter 22, verse 22. Go back a page. I apologize. This is talking about strangers. This is chapter 22, verse 20. You shall not taunt or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not cause pain to any widow or orphan. if you dare to cause him pain, and then you see the like ... exclamation point. Well, that doesn't exist in the Torah, but that's the implication. For if he shall cry out to me, I shall surely hear his outcry. My wrath shall blaze, and I shall kill you by the sword, and your wives will be widows, and your children orphans. It's pretty steep. It's a steep price. To oppress a stranger. Again, what's the challenge, especially for a widow or an orphan? These are people who are diminished socially, their power, their prestige, their ability to have somebody who's going to help them. But it's not just those people. So it says a stranger. It says going to be a stranger, a person who's new new to your shul or new to your neighborhood or new to your community. They are a stranger. Like people don't know them. It's like, who are you? We don't know who you are. And that person can be oppressed. And God is saying, you have to be so careful to not hurt people's feelings. So this, again, it's like there is no law on any books in any country that says you can't hurt somebody's feelings. Okay, there just isn't, except in the Torah there is. This is that when we get to a level where we are so concerned about how we talk to people, how we relate to them, and especially people who are, I'll give you an example. Whenever you have somebody who, they're trying to have children, for example. And so you are careful about, you don't want to say, oh, I got pregnant the first time. All those kinds of things, like these kinds of things like are really insensitive, but we kind of just talk and like share our life with no evil intent whatsoever. And yet the impact of our words can be really strongly felt. So this is very interesting. I know there's a synagogue in Denver that when they have a naming of somebody on Shabbos morning, if somebody's called for an aliyah for the naming of their child, that they say at the same time, and we also want to be sensitive to and acknowledge the people for whom they have not had children, have not been able to have children, and would love to have the simcha. And we give our prayers for all those who are, trying or who are living this life. Or for any of life circumstances, someone just lost their job, or they haven't found whatever it is in their life that they were hoping to have, which most of us don't walk around with a placard on us saying all the things that we haven't been successful in or that we wish would happen. But to just go around and say, which has been common to say now, is be very careful. Everybody is carrying a burden that you know nothing about. And so the Torah is identifying what some of those burdens are and how we want to cultivate a way of being sensitive. And the sensitivity is always when there is an imbalance with somebody is somehow in a diminished capacity, even just mildly. So widows, orphans, and this can be expanded to all sorts of things. And we see that God takes very strong objection to people who especially oppress widows and orphans. Okay. Any comments or questions just about this? I think this amazing sensitivity that we're being asked to aspire to. Okay. Yes, that's true.
And other
Yes, Darlene.
Were they sacrificing their children? Is that what other things going on at that time?
I'm sorry, Darlene, what was the question?
Like in other people, other cultures, other civilizations, was there child sacrifice? Just like the contrast between what Judaism's focus on, the caring of other people, so many guidelines, and other civilizations, like I don't know historically if that's when that was going on.
Those things have been going on forever, and wasn't just child sacrifice, it was the whole social structure. I think the book that what's his name wrote, World Perfect, by Ken Spiro, talks about all the things in society that we think are a given about how we treat and what our values are, and what the rest of the world was practicing. And it was stark enough of a contrast then. It still is. It still is that as we see unfolding around us, the world is in a pretty challenging place. And what the Torah represents is a level of, and I won't say, some say, well, the Jews aren't any better because the Jews are doing this, the Jews are doing that. It's like, but what's really interesting is, yes, exactly, Gabi, how sensitive Judaism to preserve the dignity and feelings of people exactly around them. And it's heightened sensitivity. So are we successful in doing it? And the answer is no. Clearly, look at how the Torah opens up. And you're going to be stealing, and you're going to be killing, and you're going to be murdering, and you're going to be doing this, and you're going to be doing that. Those are the realities of human behavior. But truly, we are judged by our aspirations. What do we aspire to be? That was one of the challenges about other societies, is their aspirations. Not to point the most obvious graphic thing, look at the aspirations of Hamas, the aspirations of the Hamas educational system, where your goal is to be a shahid, to be a martyr, and to kill Jews. So that's one education system. And then you have other education systems of how can I be sensitive to other people? And that is what the Torah is demanding of us, is you want to be a holy nation. You need to be a holy society, because holiness is not about our own personal silo relationship with us and the infinite creator. It is very much about how we are relating to one another and to the infinite creator. And just like a parent wants their children to get along, Hashem is saying, these are my children, and the way you treat them, I'm going to have something to say about it, because I'm the ultimate parent of you all children, and I have strong things to say. So this is the relationship, and the Jewish people are being given very specific laws, and there are, volumes in the Talmud that go into exquisite detail, and the Code of Jewish Law about how this is implemented, even just with interest. We borrowed if you borrow some money, I think Steve was just doing this in Daf Yomi. What if you borrow money, and in the time between you borrow it and you pay it back, the country changes its currency? So now you have well, how much is the money actually worth? What if they devalued it? What if it went from the old shekel to the new Israeli shekel? What do you do then? There's all sorts of things. It's not just like a general, oh, everyone should be nice. That is the fallacy of what holiness looks like. Holiness cannot be achieved in generalities. Holiness is achieved through very specific actions and interactions between one person and another in one situation after the next throughout our day. And when we're trying to climb this ladder, that's how we do it. So this is what we're trying to achieve. How well are we doing? We're doing pretty well most of the time. But the whole parsha is telling us you're probably not going to be getting it right a lot of times, but that's okay. Because we start off with going back to our Eved Ivri, our indentured Jewish servant, how did he, remember how he got there? He stole money, and so he's in big trouble, and he can't pay it back, so now he has to work it off. So it says he stole. That's who you have to mention, right after the giving of Torah. Can't we talk about some other petty crime, something? It's no, we're talking about that. It's this beautiful commentary that says, why are we talking about that? It says, it really describes each and every one of us. That at some level, each and every one of us is a mini thief. What does that mean? It says, what is a thief? It says someone who takes something that doesn't belong to them. It says, what does that mean? It says, we come into this world and God gives us our body and our soul and a set of rules and laws and guidelines for how to live our lives. When we follow the rules and we use the world as we're told to use it, then that's great. And when we don't, it says it's as if we have stolen. If I use energy that God gave me to do something wrong, it's as if I've stolen the energy. It's I didn't give you that. Be again, a parent who gives a child money and they go out and buy drugs with it. It's like, he'd say, well, it's my allowance. I can do with it whatever I want. It's like, that's not why I gave you money. That's not why I gave you a car. That's not why I gave you any of those things, is to go off and do the things I don't want you to do. I wanted you to do positive things, things that build you, that grow you, that contribute. It says, so all of us throughout our lives are like little mini thieves. When we use our time, our energy, our talent, our efforts, all of those things to do the wrong thing, or we don't do the right things with them as intended. That's considered being like a little mini thief. And so what happens? It says, there has to pay. You have to pay. There has to be some sort of compensation. So what's the compensation? So the compensation is teshuvah, where we get back on track and we correct ourselves. And the process, it says, is a 6 and then a 7. That it's 6 years for the indentured servant, and then he is released in the 7th year. So what's fascinating is, what happens if after 6 years, he hasn't really worked off all of the debt that he owes? What happens? It says, God forgives him for that, the rest of it, and it's wiped off. It's 6 years, and then you go free. It says, what does this tell us? It says, this whole situation is a real situation and a metaphor situation. It says, what's the 7? It says, 7 is like the 7 times 10, like the 70 years of our life. It says, like, you have your life, and during your life, you have all the resources that Hashem has given you, and you're responsible for how you use them. Again, like when I worked for a consulting firm where you had this like billable hours. It's like, what did you do? So we have to account for all of your hours. What were you doing? It says we have to account. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It says there's no such thing as a free life. It says, I gave you this life. What are you doing with it? It says, but that process is that there is a time for the teshuvah. And then at the end, it's like, you did the best you could, and I forgive the rest. It says that this is Hashem, because Hashem is compassionate and that allows us to do the best we can. And then at a certain point, it's like, okay, we're done, you're done. And then we get, yes, the same thing here is a relationship to Shabbos, which is 6 days to work. Exactly to Shabbos. The 6 days of the week, and the 7th day is Shabbos. All those 6s and 7s are exactly the same. So the 6 years of the servant of working it off, this 60 years or whatever, and we're not saying, well, what if you live more than 70 years? And what we're not talking about that. We're talking about as a pattern that we have a certain amount of time to fix things, and then Hashem forgives us. But then here's where the interesting thing happens. What if you really didn't fix things up? What if you really didn't fix things up? Then we have, and this parsha is actually the parsha that is connected to reincarnation. It's called Gilgul Nefesh, the reincarnation of souls. And how does this work? It says, if you really mess things up, and your soul is like, this needs to come back. God is saying, like, this is not enough. You do need to come back to do something. After your life, you will come back as another person and be able to finish the task. How do we understand that? It says, in Mishpatim, it says that when a Jewish court makes a decision, and let's say, they always give the example of Reuven and Shimon, but I'm going to use, since we're women, I'll say Rachel and Sarah. Rachel and Sarah go to court. Rachel took Sarah's money. So Sarah is the person who is the aggrieved party. But the court doesn't find in her favor, finds in the favor of Rachel. Sarah's reaction is going to be, what my reaction would be, that's not fair. She took my money. What was the problem? I didn't have proof. I didn't have proof that was the kind of proof that you need to have in a Jewish court, which is very vigorous proof. I didn't have proof. I didn't have witnesses, but she took it, and I'm out the money. So what's going to happen? It was an injustice. So in Parshas Mishpatim, we learn from this. It says Rachel's going to come back in another life, and she's going to get out that money, and Sarah's going to come back, and she's going to get it. And it's going to all work out. There's all these stories about so-and-so was sitting by the river and he saw a person who was drinking water and he left his wallet, and then somebody came and a thief killed him, and this one, and this, all these things happened. And like, what's going on? It's like, well, really, this person was a judge in a previous life and he gave a bad ruling against this person, and this person gets the money and now he gets it back. It says, and in the end, it will all be what it's corrected. Yes, Dorothy.
A couple of questions. How did you say that in Hebrew, the nefesh or nefesh?
Gilgul. Gilgul means
I'm sorry?
Gilgul. Gilgul.
Gilgul.
Gilgul. Gilgul
Nefesh.
nefesh. Gilgul
And where,
nefesh.
and do you have
Recycling of souls.
do you have the verse for that, please?
Yeah.
So that does not occur in a verse. That's in the commentary of how we understand Mishpatim. So you can look at in any standard commentary will tell you this. It's classic that this is what we understand, is why you must go with the ruling of a duly constituted Jewish court. It's even how we understand what happens in a court, like an American court. When we say justice wasn't done, what do we say? What's the Jewish answer? Is don't worry, God will be taking care of this. God will be taking care of this. I remember that that's our answer. This doesn't mean, by the way, this doesn't mean that we don't have a judicial system or that we don't try to get justice. But let's take, for example, a murder, okay? A willful murder. The testimony requires 2 witnesses who warned and witnessed the act happen. Now, how many times does that actually happen? Where the person says, I'm going to murder so-and-so with a gun on Thursday, blah, blah, blah date. And 2 people say to him, do you know that's a capital offense? You can't do that. And the person says, I know, but I don't care. And then on Thursday, whatever, the person commits the crime. How often does that happen? Not. So, but Judaism, the Torah is very concerned about putting someone to death by mistake. And so the rules of witnessing are very, very strict. So that means that somebody could get off, theoretically get off. But what this is saying is, don't worry, the person's not getting off permanently, because God will take care of it in one realm or another. So you don't need to worry. And you do the best thing you can do. That's all you need to do. You do what you need to do, and God takes care of the rest. It says the parsha of Mishpatim actually requires tremendous amount of emunah, tremendous amount of faith and trust that God is a God of justice and that justice will be done in the long term. We say all of these people who have been killed, we say, and anyone who's been killed in Jewish history, we say that Hashem should avenge their blood. That's what we say. We don't say that we go on a rampage. We say Hashem should avenge their blood. We might not be able to rectify in our lives with our capabilities, with our limitations. We might not be able to take care of it, but Hashem should avenge their blood. Okay, so this perspective is we do what we can. This isn't an abdication, but it also keeps us from entering a place of despair when we think like they got away scot-free. It's like, no, they didn't. Don't worry. There's eternity. There is eternity. And Mishpatim is based on the idea of eternity. And kind of what goes around comes around. You can talk about karma. You can talk about whatever you want. It's like nobody's getting away with anything. So in our little perspective that we get to see, we don't get to see the whole picture. We don't get to. So that is a place of comfort. So it says, Parshas Mishpatim and all these laws and the judges and the ruling about how these things work requires tremendous amount of emunah, tremendous amount of effort. It's much easier to be in a lofty place. Oh, I'm standing on Mount Sinai with God, wonderful. It's like, I can do that. But I cannot tolerate somebody who's getting away with murder. It's like, okay, then my holiness just like kind of goes right down the tubes. It's like, where's God? Where you just had your encounter with God? What are you talking about? So it's like, that's where the the rubber meets the road, is what is our perspective when we see daily life happening and we don't have any explanations of why bad things happen to good people. Hashem should have mercy on all of us. We don't have explanations for these things. You know, I'm sure you've all heard about the additional hostages that they have confirmed that are dead. It's just like, it's so horrifying and heartbreaking. What can we do? Even if we did everything, it still doesn't bring them back. It doesn't extract the true punishment that we would want for the perpetrators. It doesn't. It leaves us. So this is Hashem is God of justice. Now, in Christianity, unfortunately, Jews are always told their God is a God of love and ours is a God of law and justice. Can I tell you? That's what you want, is a God of law and justice, because it means it's ultimately fair. Love is nice, and God does love us, but God just said, these beautiful, amazing people who he just had the covenant with and gave on Mount Sinai, he's saying, my wrath is going to blaze against you and I'll kill you by the sword. Your wives will be widows and your children will be orphans. It's like, that's not love. That's a different kind of love. That's like, I love you so much that what you do matters. And what you do matters means I take account and pay attention to what you do, and nobody's getting away with anything. You know, do you remember being, I don't know, I'm looking at this group, I'm thinking most of us were probably like the goody goods in our classes. Didn't you hate when like somebody got away with something in a classroom and everybody was punished for it? Like you all had to stay in from recess, whatever. It's like, wait, I was doing the right thing. What's the best is we have had a good teacher who was fair, and you got exactly what you actually deserved. And that's a source of happiness and joy. It's like, that's what we want. So this parsha tells us that that's actually how it works, even though we cannot see it. And it's in this parsha that the Jewish people say, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do it. We will do this Torah and we will listen and we will pay attention. So in a way, it takes us to a much loftier place. It's one thing, it's very one-sided to have God revealing himself to us. It's another thing for we as limited human beings to agree and aspire to be in this divine relationship that calls us to such a high, beautiful moral standard. Even our enemies say, the problem with the Jews is they love life, and we know they won't bomb hospitals, they won't bomb schools, they won't bomb women, they won't bomb children. We will, but they won't. It's like everyone knows. So even if we're not doing it perfectly, our collective aspiration to this greatness, even though it's thrown at us as an accusation, is a badge of honor. It is a badge of honor that we carry, that we've earned. And we said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we want to live like this. This is who the Jewish people are. This is who we are. And by the way, you can bomb a school and you can bomb a hospital if it's being used as a place of military activity. We are not prohibited from doing that. That's a artificial construct that is not legitimate. Okay, so this is us. So the Eved Ivri, the person who is the indentured servant who has these 6 years of servitude, and then in the 7th year goes free. And how do they go free? They don't just say, okay, goodbye. They are given gifts by the master. Gifts, and just so they don't walk out just wearing a suit, they're supposed to be given everything they need to start their life over again and to launch them in the right direction. What this does for society was a way to address systemic problems. So that if you had somebody who, why was this person stealing to begin with? Well, there was something wrong with their thinking, that they thought that was okay. When they are living with this family now for 6 years, it was supposed to be a rehabilitative. And you can imagine that the person who was willing to have them, usually people don't want to hire somebody if I'm going to hire you to live with me, But the reason I know you're coming is because you stole from other people. Now I know, since I used to work for Marjorie Kaplan, and we would have applications for employment, and you had to say if you had been convicted of something like stealing, if you're going to work at a bank. It's like, no, you're not going to get hired. You could, I don't know, you could beat somebody, but you better not be stealing and come work in the bank. So who is this person who would want to have somebody come and live with them, they and their wife and children, and to be responsible for them, is somebody who had a heart of gold. Someone who saw that somebody could improve. Someone who had faith and could see their potential to rise up and to be a different kind of a person. Because it wasn't just to work off the debt. If you were going to work off the debt, so hire yourself at a factory or on a farm and garnish somebody's wages. You could do that. But that's not what it was. It was people took care of you. They brought your family in. You got the best pillow. If there's only one pillow, the slave got it, the servant got it. If you had good bread and bad bread, the indentured servant got the good bread. It's like this was to rehabilitate the person so that they became a different person who was capable of functioning in society with a different perspective. So there was not recidivism, however you say that. They didn't come back into the system because they weren't thrown into a place with other people who had done something wrong. They were put into a family structure where people were doing things right. And if it was a girl who got sold, she only stayed until she started menstruating. And then she was, by definition, would be released. And the expectation is that she would be married into the family, that she would be married to either the master or to the son of the master, because these people also had to have money. They had to have money and resources, and the goal was to elevate her socially and give her a fresh start and change the dynamics of their family, which means it's like instead of just, you know, how kings would marry queens from other countries to kind of consolidate empires and power. This would be to elevate her whole family, because in the Jewish world, oh, my machatanam, he has a job, and like I can recommend you for this. Like that's how things happen. You're part of a social structure. So when the girl is elevated, then her family gets elevated also. And so it was to change that dynamic to keep that whole cycle from happening. This is brilliant, brilliant. I wish our society could do something even remotely close to this. And that's what this parsha of Mishpatim is designed to do. It's designed to elevate and bring out the best amongst people and among people who are flawed and imperfect, and give us the best chance and the best hope of reaching our highest potential of being complete, truly holy. And we said to this, Na'aseh v'nishma, Na'aseh v'nishma. So the combination of rehabilitation, restitution, repair, completing, fixing, whether I'm completing it in this lifetime, or if I'm here on a Gilgul, I'm here on a reincarnation and I'm fixing something from a previous life and I don't know, or I'm part of somebody else's story. You know, we've mentioned this a number of times just because it always seems reason to mention it, that when we say the Shema at night, the bedtime Shema, and we ask and we give forgiveness to people who have hurt us, our money, our honor, or anything else in this transmigration of the soul or in a previous transmigration. And we are recognizing that not only are we operating in a different framework than the rest of the world, we're operating in a multi-lifetimes framework at the same time. So that's very complicated. Have you ever played three-dimensional bingo? It's very hard. Or no, is it three-dimensional tic-tac? No, I don't remember. It was tic-tac-toe or three-dimensional bingo. We gave away the. Yeah, it's really hard, right? It's like we got going the three different levels. Like, oh, I never saw that. It's like our life is working in very multiple dimensions in addition to eternity. And we make a mistake when we flatten it out into this moment, this lifetime, just me, and fail to see the connections that we have with people throughout the ages over time. There was a picture, this wasn't, I don't know, it was Gilgal Nefesh, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was a beautiful picture of 4 women from the Holocaust who were prisoners, and their 4 granddaughters of each one of them. They all survived, those 4 survived the Holocaust, but they were in the concentration camp. Each of their granddaughters is now in the IDF, and there was a picture of the 4 girls who were the granddaughters of these 4 women. It's like, what is that? I mean, it's like, wow, that's so amazing on one hand. On the other hand, it's like, wow, what is that? So sometimes we get like a little peek and we can see like, oh, there's something else going on here. There's something else going on. And that is supposed to also give us a sense of faith and trust in the overall system that is bigger than what we can possibly comprehend. And that we only know a very little amount of what's really going on. And hopefully that helps us. All right.
That picture is, if I find, I'll send it to you. You can send to everyone because I can't forget it.
Yeah, it's a really incredible picture. And, there have been, so all of these things, and with the Jewish people, all these connections, but you see something like that, it's like, wow, what is that? What is that? There is something.
Victory.
What are the chances of those 4 women having their picture? I mean, those 4 women standing there during the Holocaust and say like, wow, like maybe we'll survive and our granddaughters will be in the Israeli Defense Force. It's like, not even a thought, not even a thought. It'll be like, if we live, we'll be happy. If we live. And then to see that, it's
I'd
really
like to see the picture. I don't think I've seen it, please.
okay. Gabi will look for it. I'll also look for it and see where I saw it. I think I may have seen it on Facebook. So yes, Patricia, were you going to say something?
So, I don't mean to be dramatic, but like, how do you forgive these terrorists?
You don't forgive them. You do not.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, it's not about forgiving. It's about, we do not forgive. In fact, you're not allowed to forgive these people who come in. I went to something one time and someone said, and I forgive the Nazis for doing blah, blah, blah. It's like,
Bullshit. Yeah.
you cannot forgive them. It's not, first of all, it's not yours to forgive. You cannot forgive. In fact, in the Torah is very specifically, it says if somebody kills someone, you cannot accept any amount of payment to compensate. It's not yours to accept. There's no such thing. The only thing that atones is the death of the person who caused the death. That's the atonement, is their death. It's not our forgiveness. We do not forgive. However, there is a way of carrying on with equanimity and being able to move forward in your life without having it eat you up. So it's interesting, just since you mention it, my sister is doing her PhD on not forgiving.
Shulamit?
Yeah, not Shulamit, Miriam Devora, Melissa. It was through conversation. She's getting her PhD in social work. And everyone always talks about, oh, you have to forgive and move on and blah, blah, blah. It's like she was talking to people who were Holocaust survivors and they're like, absolutely not. Absolutely do not forgive them for 1 second. Never would, never will, never could. And it hasn't hurt my life at all because I know that my life is worthwhile and anything that they tried to destroy in me, that's their problem, not my problem. And God will take care of them, but I absolutely do not forgive them. So we are not a turn the other cheek people, and we do not forgive them. Ever, ever. That's why we say Hashem should avenge their blood. That means we don't forgive you. We even still say that about people who were killed centuries ago. We still say, and Hashem should avenge their blood because we don't forgive. We don't forgive and we don't forget, but we do move forward. And what allows us to move forward is to know that there is an overall divine justice system and nobody's actually getting away with it. We may not have control over it, but don't think that the story is over. So thank you for the question. That's really important because it could sound like, oh no, like let it go. It's like, you don't need to let it go. Okay. Now, that being said, when it comes to a court, a Jewish court that rules against us, and we feel that they ruled unfairly, and maybe it was unfair, we are not supposed to hold a grudge on that. Then we're supposed to understand that there was something else going on and that we needed to pay that money, the fine or whatever it was, for reasons we don't know. It's like they say, if you don't give enough tzedakah, your car engine's going to go out. It's like, you're going to end up paying one way or the other. So it says if the Jewish court says, like, you are the one responsible and you have to pay him, and I know that I was not guilty. What do we say? It should be a kapara. It should be an atonement for me. There must have been money that I owed somewhere. So let this be that. And then you walk out and you are supposed to be friends with the person who brought the whatever and with the court, and you don't hold it against them. But when we're talking, so that's very different. So that's a different scenario than when there has been a wrong that was committed against us or against someone we know or beloved family member or whatever, like a killing or something like that, that we do not forgive. We don't forgive that. So yes, Etta. So you're yeah.
Yeah, now I'm not muted. I wanted to ask, these laws are for our brothers and sisters. These laws are between all the Jewish people. Okay.
Correct.
Now, the Jews that I see are the teachers in the schoolyard. They are going to spread this light and teach everybody just how to be. But things don't work out exactly the way it does between Jews and between non-Jews. So you get all kinds of unexpected things that just occur because it wasn't meant to be, I think, extended from us and the way we think and treat, and we should treat everybody well, absolutely, fair business practices, kindness, everything. But I'm just saying, when you take this system, which is a beautiful system, doesn't include prisons, it doesn't include all kinds of things that the modern world has, it doesn't seem to work. Because
Correct.
you want to take in someone into your house who's a thief, who's not Jewish.
I'm not sure I took into the person who's a thief who was Jewish. Honestly, I'm at a very low level person. My emunah must not be very good. So the truth is the Jewish people were at a higher level than we're all at. We have been impacted by the societies that we live in. Though I have to say, we can see that the way societies do handle this doesn't really work so well either. So we haven't really quite figured it out. So I want to kind of separate out a couple of things. One is that many of the laws that we have in Mishpatim are only between Jew and Jew. For example, not charging interest, because being an economist, money has a price, and you are absolutely supposed to and entitled to charge interest to a non-Jew. The reason you don't to a Jewish person is because it's like your mother. Like if your mother said, can I borrow $100? You don't tell her, yeah, well, that'll cost you. Be like, excuse me? So it's a favor that we are doing. It is a favor. It is above and beyond. It's not because there's anything wrong with charging interest, just as there's nothing wrong with charging for any other, all the things that go into the production of anything. What is it? Land, capital, whatever, I'll forget all my economic terms. All of that stuff you pay rent, you pay for the use of money. That's what interest is paying for the use of money. So we're doing a favor because we're family for people who are Jewish. So that being said, this doesn't mean that if somebody is non-Jewish and we loan them money and we charge interest, there's no reason to say that we don't treat them kindly and respectfully. And we don't say like, oh, you're a goy, so I can do whatever I want to you. That is not how we are supposed to operate. Instead, it says, in fact, specifically for the sake of shalom, for the sake of peace in a community, we extend certain courtesies to other people, but it's not demanded the way it is when it's your family. So if your sister came knocking at your door and said, I really need some money to tide me over, and you say, well, I can give it to you, but I'm going to charge you interest, I think you have a problem with your family relationship. If a stranger comes and says, I need some money, it's like, okay, it'll cost you, and I need collateral. So that's considered sound business practice. So you're very right that there's a difference. What we are supposed to do, though, ideally, is in the land of Israel, the Jewish people living in a society that holds by these laws, is to be a beacon of light to what it looks like to be in this elevated place. Not perfect, but holy. And holy and perfect are two different things. Two different things. To inspire other people to elevate their standards. Not to the same. Nobody says the other nations of the world, the only laws that they're required to observe are the 7 laws of B'nai Noach. Nobody says they have to do any of these other things. But there is like a gestalt overriding way of seeing a society that functions, that is godly, that is to be admired, and that is to be copied in some way, whatever way works for them. We'll see. We're not there yet, clearly. We're not there yet. So I want to take, if you don't mind, just a few more minutes to explain a gematria to you that I wanted to share, if that's okay. And that is that we go to Na'aseh V'Nishma, which is in this week's parsha, has a gematria of 891. So the gematria of Na'aseh V'Nishma is 891. It's also the gematria of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt. We know that the Jewish people, it says we were on a very low level. Remember, we were on the 49th level of spiritual impurity when we left Egypt. So you could say, like, why did God save us then? It says, really saved us because, as God had said to Moshe at the burning bush, you will come back here to worship me on this holy mountain. I'm redeeming you for your future of what you will become, not what you have done. I'm redeeming you because I know you're going to accept the Torah. Your Yetziat Mitzrayim, your exodus from Egypt, is going to lead to Na'aseh V'Nishma. We will do it and we will listen. And the gematria, the mathematical equivalent, is that they're both equal to 891. So one leads to the other, one is the cause of the other, one is the purpose of the other, however you want to do it. So people who would like to end the equation with God just doesn't like people being enslaved, is like, not so, because it says we became servants of Hashem. We became Ovdei Hashem. We are servants of Hashem. In addition to that, there's several of them, but it says that the Jewish people, that we received crowns, and we talked about that last week. So that we received 2 crowns, when we said one for Na'aseh and one for Nishma, and that we got those crowns. It says, and what else? What were those crowns? So we know who wears a crown. It's when there's malchut, when there is kingship, when there's a coronation, and the Jewish people are told, you are going to be a mamlechet kohanim. You are going to be a kingdom of priests, and a goy kadosh, and a holy nation. Even with all your imperfections, it's what you strive for that counts. So it says, what is the malchut that we're talking about? It says, we're talking about the way it's going to go, the order. It says, first, there will be that the Jewish people will honor the malchut shamayim, the kingdom of heaven. Okay, the malchut shamayim is the kingdom of heaven. The malchut shamayim, that phrase, malchut hashamayim, is 891. Na'aseh v'nishma, malchut hashamayim, that we are going to honor the kingdom of heaven. And then what will Hashem give us? He will give us malchut David u'Shlomo, the malchut of David and King Solomon. David, it's both because that's the line of kingship, and King Solomon, as we know, is the one who built the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. Malchut David u'Shlomo equals 891. So this Na'aseh v'Nishma is like we have these 2 malchuts. We have these 2 kingships, the kingdom of heaven and the kingship of the earthly kingship. And when those two things come together, that means that the package is complete. And our whole goal as we travel through all the details and the specific, beautiful intricacies and nuances of the mitzvot and mishpatim is to bring us to an awe of the Malchut HaShamayim, of the kingdom of heaven, and to bring down that kingship into Malchut David Ushlomo, to establish then an earthly kingship where we connect those things together. And where does it happen? Ir Shalem, in Yerushalayim, the place of wholeness between when those two kingdoms meet and touch each other. Our job is to bring that all down to earth. This is on, I think it's a Christian say, on earth as it is in heaven, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's from us. So that's what we're trying to establish, is to bring God's kingship. What does it look like? It's where God would be proud to live amongst us. And in this week's parsha of Mishpatim, he tells us exactly what's required. The standards are high, and he knows we're not going to meet them, because it starts out the whole parsha saying, and when you do this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, then I'm going to really let you have it. But you are a goy kadosh. You are my treasured nation, and I love you. And I love you for what you aspire to be. And you look at anyone, whoever reaches all their goals. I didn't even reach my goals from last year, let alone from a goal for my life. Whoever reaches their goals, but you judge a person based on what do they aspire to become. And the Jewish people aspire to become lofty human beings, not perfect, lofty, holy human beings who have the Malchut HaShamayim, the kingdom of heaven, established through the kingdom on earth of Malchut David Ushlomo. God willing, that we tie together Yetziat Mitzrayim, Na'aseh v'nishma, Malchut HaShamayim, Malchut David Ushlomo, 891, 891, 891, 891. All of it fits together. It all adds up. We're working with a tremendous system. Just knowing that we don't know already puts us in a good place. It's like, I don't know. Beyond, above my pay grade. It's truly above my pay grade. But this is what we just need to know, is what this framework is. So I hope that everybody enjoys all the details and relishes all whatever you can learn about this. Just makes it so much more interesting. This parsha actually makes me cry more than standing aside. Because wow, God thinks we're capable of so much. So certainly we can live up to a lot of it. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph begins on, is 2-day Rosh Chodesh, is on Friday and on Shabbos. So we are launching Purim along with Parshas Mishpatim. Hashem should bless you. Thank you so much.
It was fantastic what you taught us with the gematria. It gives me goosebumps, and now I'm cold. It was unbelievable. I'm so
How
sorry.
are you doing back in Israel? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Gabi.
After that, if you can, someone came down the door, so I had to go pick it open, and I missed that Melissa is doing a PhD on forgiveness, and then I didn't get exactly how you said we cannot forgive.
Yeah, it was right. It was,
yeah,
no, we don't forgive people who murder. We don't forgive them. So she's doing her PhD on not forgiving, about kind of turning on its head this theory that in order to go ahead and have a healthy life, you need to forgive people who have done terrible things to you. You're saying, and then not just like the Holocaust, it could be abuse. It could be also things like you do not need to forgive them. You don't.
Really?
You can move forward with it and use it as a springboard to develop and to what you don't do is you don't want to take in whatever messages of lack of self-worth that whatever the perpetrator perpetrated against you, that you can deal with, but it's not forgiveness. So she was talking to people who were Holocaust survivors. They're like, absolutely not. And my life hasn't suffered. I'm happy. I have a family. I have kids. I have a successful business. I'm a joyful person. We have simchas, but I absolutely do not forgive for 1 second what the people did to my family. Absolutely not. So it's just a fabulous and fascinating.
So then the Shema Lamita is talking about small things, like difficult
Yeah,
people
yeah,
in life.
Right. It says against my money or my honor. People who insulted me or people who did that. It's talking about those. It's absolutely not talking about anything that they killed me in a previous life. It's not. I'm not talking about that.
Ellen?
Yes, Andy.
I didn't hear if you explained this, but when you're talking about the 6 years of servitude if you steal, how does that translate now in this day and age?
It doesn't,
Oh,
because we don't have that whole setup. This was if somebody stole money and did not have the money any longer to repay, then the court would sell them into servitude to pay back. And that's how this whole thing happened. So we do not have that system at all.
what is the Jewish law regarding people who steal now?
So you are subject to the laws of the land. So the laws of America, Colorado, you are subject to those laws. There's like Dina Malchuta Dina, the laws of the land are the law. So that being said, because the American court system is imperfect, any legal system is going to be imperfect because there are limitations all the way around. And once you exhaust you are supposed to pursue legal action when you can, if it's appropriate. And then if you take it as far as you want to take it, and then at the end you can say, Hashem will take care of it. Okay. Whatever it is, you can still say that. Just like if you get a police officer pulls you over and says you were doing something and you weren't. And they say, no, I know you were. It's like, I know I wasn't. And here's a ticket for whatever. And you fight it, whatever, and you still end up paying it. It's like, I must have owed some tzedakah. After a while, at certain point, you were like, okay, this clears some debt of something somewhere. So it's kind of a blended thing, but we don't have anything official that, especially for the person who steals, and then they have to pay back the money or that. So in that way, what we're using it for is an awareness of the sensitivity and the beauty of the system, to understand that there's such an emphasis on the ability for a person to be rehabilitated and to be re-educated to live a productive life in society. That if they are around the right kind of family, the right people, that they can turn themselves around. And we know stories, we'll hear stories about somebody who they were, a juvenile delinquent, and they got under the influence of a person in their life who saw their potential, and they were able to, go on to be a productive human being. This system more put it into an official practice and didn't leave it to like, oh, well, I hope it works out. It was more designed to really address the problem, but we do not have that because we're not in a Torah world. We are, even in the land of Israel, we're not in a Torah world. So we can't do it.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that.
How are you feeling, Ellen? Are you feeling okay?
Good, thank you.
Because
How is it being back in Israel?
Was it hard to leave Audrey and the family?
It was hard, especially, it was hard because we were there for a month. So it was hard. And it was great to be back. And we got a really nice, warm welcome back. It's nice. People said, oh, I missed you. And Steve had an aliyah on the first Shabbos we were back, and they sang the song that they sing when you make aliyah. V'shavu banim, and you turn to their borders. They sing that we make aliyah, and they sing that. So someone says, like, what are they congratulating you for? It's like, nothing. We just flew back.
That's
but
so nice.
It was very sweet.
Because it's still not a year, right? Or is it a year?
Since we made aliyah? Yes, we made aliyah in December of 23.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That went quick.
No, December of 22. December of 22. Yes. So we've been here.
Wow.
It is like So yeah, we came in December, but we moved into Mitzpeh Yericho. We moved in May 30th. So we've been here June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So 8.5 months, 8 months,
Almost a baby.
almost a baby. Yeah. So
And
That's so nice.
how special they all missed you. That's a nice feeling to come home and be noticed.
yeah, it was very nice. And it was also nice because people invited us for our first 2 Shabbos meals out for Shabbos dinner, Shabbos lunch. So we didn't have to, because we got back on a Thursday. So
Yeah.
that's a little,
And how's your son and his daughter-in-law doing? And
thank
the children?
God. They're doing
Okay.
well. We're actually going to go spend Shabbos with them. So
Very
Nice.
nice. How far are they from you?
they're about just shy of an hour drive.
And where do you
but it's-
stay?
Oh, that's far. That's far in
Yeah.
And where do you
Now,
sleep?
a lot closer than what it used to be seeing them twice a year. Now we see them once a week. So it's-
Nice, once a week. And where do you sleep when you go there? That apartment guest house?
no, we don't do that because that's like $100 a night. So we don't do that. So people are very generous, and they
Mhm.
friends of theirs have a guest room that's available. So we're going to stay
Oh,
there.
they have a guest room there? Oh, like in a
No,
house.
Benjamin and Dolly, people's friends of theirs who have a home, a single family home, have a guest rooms that we can
Was
stay
there
in.
homes and apartments or all homes?
No, there's homes and there's apartments on the yeshiva campus, and then there are homes in the neighborhood that surround it.
In the
So
kibbutz.
That's very nice
it's
for
the
you.
kibbutz, and it's called Nofay Alon. It's a little community.
You can walk like
Yeah.
neighbor.
Yeah, it's right, really, really close. So
That's better
we-
than the other solution.
I'm sorry.
Better than the other solution that was not so near. Near, but not as near.
What other solution?
$100 one.
Oh, well, we just don't want to pay $100 to go
No, I
spend
know, but
Shabbos.
that's further. That was further,
It is
right?
further. I mean, it's a 10-minute walk instead of a 5-minute walk.
Okay.
So that did make a difference. But when we were in Florida, we let some neighbors of ours use our apartment for their parents and sister to stay in while we were gone.
You do the
So-
same. Blessings come back.
So it's nice. It's interesting though, people have the custom that if you go to stay at someone's home, you bring your own sheets and towels.
Oh, okay.
Because to not impose like somebody having to do a lot of laundry just because you slept on their, because you know how, I mean, it's one thing to do laundry for somebody who stayed with you for a week or something, but if somebody
But
just stayed the night and then you have to like do like laundry, just, it's like kind of annoying. So anyway, the custom is to bring your sheets and towels.
That's a nice idea. What do you
Yeah,
think?
so Benjamin and Dahlia have a set of guest sheets, and so when we take them over to their friends' houses and put them on the beds.
That's
think
very
it's
nice.
Talking about high sensitivity, like I always tell my son when I go there, people that park like in between lanes and then you grab 2 parking spots and no sensitivity. You talk about that. So it's the same thing. No, it's like the
As
same
I
idea.
said, it's like, as I said,
Try
we have
to be
we
very,
have
very
we have a lot of
close.
work to do. We're not there yet.
But thanks to you, Rare. Thanks to you. And I want to hear more about Melissa's. It's a Holocaust survivors mainly that she's dealing with.
Actually, I don't know. Who she's talking with and her literature search, but that's her theme. That's what her that's
Forgiveness.
or whatever. That's her of not forgiveness, of non-forgiveness.
Non-forgiveness. And
Where does she live?
She lives in Yerushalayim.
and where does
Oh,
she study?
interesting.
At the Hebrew U or Yeshi? Or where?
No, she's it's Yeshiva University.
Oh, she does it online.
Yeah, she's also teaching online. Yeah, she teaches by Zoom.
Hello.
What does she teach?
Hello.
She's teaching classes in social work.
Oh, it's a social one. Well, tell her that
Nice.
we're interested to know more what it means because everyone says forgive but don't forget, and you're telling us something new. But for sure, for Hamas now, it's also Holocaust survivor and Hamas now. It's
You don't
it's
forgive. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
and And also,
Oh,
when
and
you-
what do we say? Look at it, even Haman, we're gonna celebrate Purim, right? And what do we say? Yimach Shemo, his name should be obliterated. Right? And we say that about Hitler, we say that about all of them. The thing that's so beautiful, can you think about like what a burden it is to ask the person who is the victim to say you have to forgive? That's an additional, I think that's an additional,
like abuse, maybe?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, Andy, I didn't see what you just said. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just asking if you would please remind me the name of where you live. I couldn't remember, and my friend goes back a lot here.
Oh, which friend?
Her name is Judy and Gerald Shapiro, and their daughter lives there with 5 kids and 1 on the way. So they go
Where?
back from Scottsdale. They are from Minnesota.
And where do the people live in Israel?
I don't remember that either, but I was going to tell her, and then she could.
I'm going to send it to you in the chat, Andy, okay?
Thank you so much.
Of Ma'ale Adumim. There you go.
So the PhD is called Non-Forgiveness. Is that the title of the PhD?
No, that's her dissertation.
Okay.
And it's not called non-forgiveness. I mean, she has some sort of thing, but that's her premise. That's the premise.
But could you explain, because Shema Lamita every night you read and forgive past lives and future lives and everyone in the world.
Yeah.
And but
But you notice it has all of these things have definitions and frameworks around them. It does not say if the person murdered me in a past life. It says monetary and honor and things that are like the things that need to be whatever it is. Maybe you're fighting and they fired you without reason, or so those kind of, I'll call those the common things that people have issues with. We don't know. Or it could be something a little bit more major, because there are stories about that too, about somebody who did something that was very significant. And then in the next life there was some sort of whatever, but it's short of murder. Murder is not included.
No, it's a very important class. Wow. Thank you so much.
So it's a great parsha.
For elevating us always.
Thank you
It's
for
not our place to forgive other people. Like with the
Absolutely.
Holocaust or with the Hamas. If we didn't go through it, we can't possibly say we forgive you.
even if we did go through
Right.
it, we can't forgive them. A person who
Oh,
said,
really?
you cannot forgive
Oh, I
somebody.
didn't know that.
No, if God forbid somebody, let's say somebody murdered my parent, I can't forgive them for murdering my parent. Nobody can forgive them for murdering my parent. So this whole thing is it's a bogus thing to say. They
Mhm.
cannot be forgiven.
Only
Now, their
person.
person's death can atone for that.
Oh, really?
That's why we have capital punishment.
Oh, but I didn't think I thought it was rarely used.
It was rarely used.
Yeah, because sometimes the wrong one is being accused, and then after years they say, "Oops."
Yeah, no, but a Jewish court, it says a Jewish court that put someone to death once in 7 years was called a bloody court, and some say once in 70 years. So it was,
Wow.
it wasn't used, it was that the people didn't meet the halacha criteria for the witnessing.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So that being said, is like then their death, even if they are not executed, it says their death can atone for what they did. And if there's need further punishment, God will take care of them. That's what we talk about, like burning it. It's like there is a consequence. There is a consequence.
So that brings us back then to Joseph forgiving the brothers, because we always understood in a basic interpretation of Torah that Joseph forgave his brothers. But then there's these 10 Gilgulim. But Reb Zvi said, no, the reason that he didn't was because of what happened to the 10 martyrs who died at the hands of the Romans, or throughout, who were the kapara for that. So I was
Uh-huh.
very confused.
That's
Because
interesting.
And
Because
it
you
doesn't-
can
I mean-
look at the text, you can look at the text. What Yosef says to his brothers is you sold me. You meant me harm, and Hashem meant it for good. So he doesn't.
So
you
that's
can
the
say
forgiveness.
Not exactly. Maybe it's not exactly forgiveness. It's that he puts it into
he understands the plan.
he understands it
Right.
differently. They're
Right.
still.
So it's
I
just
think they were saying
interesting
this,
that
that
you
they're
say that we
still-
shouldn't forgive.
Right. We shouldn't.
But I
They're
think we
still-
learn the principle of forgiveness from Yosef with his brothers as a basic interpretation of Torah. That's what we learn, right? Because we are supposed to forgive.
Yes
So
and
it's
no.
interesting.
Yes and no.
Right.
Let's look at this more carefully. Let's look at this more carefully.
Interesting.
So Selena, let's look at this more carefully.
Oh, now?
Just
Okay,
right,
yeah, sure.
right now, let me offer this. If I say, and if I'm able to reframe something that happens and see it from a larger perspective, that's me. That's me. And so then I can identify you as differently. It doesn't take
Right.
away from
Right.
the brothers having to really do more soul searching. That being said, Yosef tries to create a scenario that gives them an opportunity to show their teshuvah. That's the whole thing with Yehuda and Benjamin. That's why he takes Benjamin to see what will the brothers do? Will they sell Benjamin? And they didn't. They wouldn't. That's where Yehuda redeems that.
Got
It's
it.
a teshuvah. That's called a teshuvah shlema. So
Tikkun.
I don't know. Yes and no, because there you are absolutely right about the 10 martyrs and they were told to accept this with love, and this is what they want from heaven, so that there may have been some remnant of something that is still an issue. We say
But
that
I think that's very advanced knowledge. I don't think that's for your average person reading the Torah. That's what I said to Reb Tzvi. I said that's not what most people would surely have to take out of there. We have to be able to forgive certain things.
He never
because
said, I
otherwise-
forgive you. Just so you know,
Right.
he never said, I forgive you. He said, you
Right.
meant it for bad and God meant it for good. That's not exactly, I
Very
forgive you.
interesting.
It means
Right.
I have a bigger perspective of this. And one can say that about other things. One can say
Right.
this about many things that have harmed a person. They can say,
Right.
you know, let's say somebody, God forbid, they lived a life and they were abused as a child. Okay, now do they forgive their parent for abusing them? They don't forgive their parent. But they could say, what I went through has enabled me to reach a level of compassion and understanding for other people who have been struggling, and I've made it my life's work now to be a counselor for people who have suffered abuse. So just because I put it into a different perspective and put God in the picture there doesn't take away from the guilt of the person who committed the act. They still have to, they're still liable. Just because I've done something with it is different.
Right.
So it's more complicated than we think.
Yeah. And it doesn't end there because Celine?
Selena,
it doesn't end there because the Nuremberg trial had the Nazis that knew our faith too well and knew exactly that it was Purim, and they knew that they are being hanged now.
Right.
That's all connected,
Lots of interesting things. Okay, I'm going to go into my
Thank
kitchen.
you. All right.
Laila
Hope you
Tov.
enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
ladies.
Family. Shabbat shalom. Or not yet. Almost.
Shalom. Thank
Bye,
you.
Romy.